Hare Krishna, my dear devotees. Welcome back to the daily readings of Srila Prabhupada's books, right here in the Haven, in Hythe, Kent, southeast England, just a stone's throw from the English Channel. We welcome you all. Hope that you're safe and well and happy in these troubled times. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram by Srila Sanatana Goswami glorifies the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as well as explaining what it is. It goes like this: Sarva Shastrabdi Piyusha Sarva Vedaika Satpala Sarva Siddhanta Ratnadya Sarva Lokaika Drikprada. O nectar from the ocean of all scriptures, singular fruit of all the Vedas, rich mine of the precious gems of all conclusive truths, you are the only giver of sight to all the worlds. Sarva Bhagavata Purāṇa Śrīmad-Bhāgavata Prabho Kali Dvandoditaditya Sri Krishna Parivartita. O life air of all the Supreme Lord's devotees, O Master Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, you are the sun risen in the darkness of Kali. You are the exact image of Sri Krishna. Paramananda Pataya Prema Varshakshadayate Sarvada Sarvasevyaya Sri Krishnaya Namostume. I bow down to you who are supremely blissful to read. Your every syllable pours down a flood of prema. You can always be served by everyone. You are Sri Krishna himself. Madeka Bando Matsangin Madguro Man Mahadana Manistadaga Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostute. My only friend, my constant companion, my spiritual master, my great wealth, my savior, my good fortune, my source of ecstasy, I bow down to you. Asadu Sadhuta Dayin Atini Chochata Kada Hanamun Chagadachin Mam Premna Ritkanta Yukspura. O bestower of saintliness to the unsaintly, O exalter of the most fallen, please never leave me. Always appear in my heart and my voice with pure love. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So, we've reached the 8th chapter of the 3rd canto of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, manifestation of Brahmā from Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu. Maitreya Muni is continuing to answer the deep questions of Vidura. Text 1. The great sage Maitreya Muni said to Vidura, "The royal dynasty of King Puru is worthy to serve the pure devotees because all the descendants of that family are devoted to the personality of Godhead. You are also born in that family, and it is wonderful that because of your attempt, the transcendental pastimes of the Lord are becoming newer and newer at every moment." Purport. The great sage Maitreya thanked Vidura and praised him by reference to his family glories. The Puru dynasty was full of devotees of the personality of Godhead and was therefore glorious. Because they were not attached to the impersonal Brahman or to the localized Paramatma, but were directly attached to Bhagavan, the personality of Godhead, they were worthy to render service to the Lord and his pure devotees. Because Vidura was one of the descendants of that family, naturally he engaged in spreading wide the ever-new glories of the Lord. Maitreya felt happy to have such glorious company as Vidura. He considered the company of Vidura most desirable, because such association can accelerate one's dormant propensities for devotional service. Text 2. Let me now begin speaking on the Bhagavata Purāṇa, which was directly spoken to the great sages by the Personality of Godhead for the benefit of those who are entangled in extreme miseries for the sake of very little pleasure. Purport. The sage Maitreya proposed to speak on Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam because it was especially compiled and has traditionally come down in the disciplic succession to provide the solution to all the problems of human society. Only one who is fortunate can have the opportunity to hear Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam in the association of pure devotees of the Lord. Under the spell of the material energy, the living entities are entrapped in the bondage of many difficulties simply for the sake of a little bit of material happiness. They engage in fruitive activities not knowing the implications. Under the false impression that the body is the self, the foolish living entities become attached to so many things, thinking they can relate with such material paraphernalia forever. This gross misconception of life is so strong that a person suffers continually, life after life, under the external energy of the Lord. If one comes in contact with both the book Bhagavatam and the devotee Bhagavata, who knows what the Bhagavatam is, then such a fortunate man gets out of the material entanglement. Therefore, Sri Maitreya Muni, out of compassion for the suffering men in the world, proposes to speak on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam first and last. Text 3. Some time ago, being inquisitive to know, Sanat Kumara, the chief of the boy saints, accompanied by other great sages, inquired exactly as you have about the truth regarding Vasudeva, the Supreme, from Lord Sankarshan, who was seated at the bottom of the universe. Purport. This is in clarification of the statement of the Lord of the statement that the Lord spoke directly on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. When and unto whom the Bhagavatam was spoken is explained herewith. Questions similar to those put forward by Vidura or asked by great sages like Sanat Kumara and Lord Sankarshan, the plenary expansion of the Supreme Lord Vasudeva, answered them. Text 4. At that time, Lord Sankarshan was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, upon whom the Lord, again. At that time, Lord Sankarshan, Lord Sankarshana was meditating upon his Supreme Lord, whom the learned esteem as Lord Vasudeva, but for the sake of the advancement of the great learned sages, he slightly opened his lotus-like eyes and began to speak. Text 5. The sages came from the highest planets down to the lower region through the water of the Ganges, and therefore the hair on their heads was wet. They touched the lotus feet of the Lord, which are worshipped with various paraphernalia by the daughters of the Serpent King when they desire good husbands. Purport. The Ganges water flows directly from the lotus feet of Viṣṇu, and its course runs from the highest planet of the universe down to the lowest. The sages came down from Satyaloka by taking advantage of the flowing water, a process of transportation made possible by the power of mystic yoga. If a river flows thousands and thousands of miles, a perfect yogi can at once transport himself from one place to another simply by dipping in its water. The Ganges is the only celestial river which flows throughout the universe, and great sages travel all over the universe via this sacred river. The statement that their hair was wet indicates that it had been directly moistened by the Ganges, the water originating from the lotus feet of Viṣṇu. Whoever touches the water, the Ganges, to his head, surely touches the lotus feet of the Lord directly, and thus becomes free from all effects of sinful acts. If after taking a bath in the Ganges and being washed of all sins, a man guards himself against committing further sinful acts, then certainly he is delivered. But if he again takes up sinful activities, his bath in the Ganges is as good as that of the elephant, who nicely takes his bath in a river, but later spoils the whole thing by covering himself with dust on the land. Text 6. The four Kumaras, headed by Sanat Kumara, who all knew the transcendental pastimes of the Lord, glorified the Lord in rhythmic accents with selected words full of affection and love. At that time Lord Sankarsana, with his thousands of raised hoods, began to radiate an effulgence from the glowing stones on his head. Purport. The Lord is sometimes addressed as Uttama Shloka, which means one who is worshipped with selected words by devotees. A profusion of such selected words comes from a devotee who is fully absorbed in affection and love for the devotional service of the Lord. There are many instances in which even a small boy, who is a great devotee of the Lord, could offer excellent prayers in the choicest words for glorification of the pastimes of the Lord. In other words, without the development of fine affection and love, one cannot offer prayers to the Lord very suitably. Text 7. Lord Sankarsana thus spoke the purport of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam to the great sage Sanat Kumara, who had already taken the vow of renunciation. Sanat Kumara also, in his turn, when inquired of by Sankyayana Muni, explained Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam as he had heard it from Sankarsana. Purport. This is the way of the Parampara system. Although Sanat Kumara, the well-known great saintly Kumara, was in the perfect stage of life, still he heard the message of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam from Lord Sankarsana. Similarly, when Sanat Kumara was questioned by Sankyayana Rishi, the Kumara spoke to him the same message he had heard from Lord Sankarsana. In other words, unless one hears from the proper authority, one cannot become a preacher. In devotional service, therefore, 2 items out of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. Text 8. The great sage, Sankyayana, was the chief amongst the transcendentalists, and when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, it so happened that both my spiritual master, Parashara, and Brihaspati heard him. Text 9. The great sage Parashara, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Purāṇas, Bhāgavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. Purport. The great sage Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parashara began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. The great sage Vasishtha Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashara to stop the deadly action. And because of Vasishtha's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashara could not deny the request. Parashara, having stopped the sacrifice, Pulastya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessings that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Purāṇas, the supplements of the Vedas. Parashara's action was appreciated by Pulastya because Parashara had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. Parashara was able to demolish all these demons in the sacrifice, but he considered demons are so made that they devour any living creature, man or animal. But why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? As the great speaker of the Purāṇas, Parashara first of all spoke on the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Purāṇa, because it is the foremost of all the Purāṇas. Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parashara, and Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession, even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate to Purāṇas to be only the so-called historians calculate the Purāṇas to be only a few hundred years old. But factually, the Purāṇas existed from time immemorial, before all historical calculations by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. Text 10. When the three worlds were submerged in water, Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu was alone, lying on his bedstead, the great snake Ananta, and although Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu appeared to be in slumber in his own internal potency, free from the action of the external energy, his eyes were not completely closed. Purport. The Lord is eternally enjoying transcendental bliss by his internal potency, whereas the external potency is suspended during the time of the dissolution of the cosmic manifestation. Text 11. Just like the strength of fire within fuel wood, the Lord remained within the water of dissolution, submerging all the living entities in their subtle bodies. He lay in the self-invigorated energy called Kala. Purport. After the three worlds, the upper, lower, and middle planetary systems merged into the water of dissolution. The living entities of all the three worlds remained in their subtle bodies by dint of the energy called Kala. In this dissolution, the gross bodies became unmanifest, but the subtle bodies existed, just like the water of the material creation. Thus, the material energy was not completely wound up, as is the case in the full dissolution of the material world. Text 12. The Lord laid down for 1,000 cycles of 4 yugas in his internal potency, and by his external energy, he appeared to be sleeping within the water. When the living entities were coming out for further development of their fruitive activities, actuated by the energy called Kala Shakti, he saw his transcendental body was bluish. Purport. In the Viṣṇu Purāṇa, the Kala Shakti is mentioned as avidya. The symptom of the influence of the Kala Shakti is that one has to work in the material world for fruitive results. The fruitive workers are described in the Bhagavad Gita as mudhas, or fools. Such foolish living entities are very enthusiastic to work for some temporary benefit within perpetual bondage. One thinks himself very clever throughout his life if he is able to leave behind him a great asset of wealth for his children. And to achieve this temporary benefit, he takes the risk of all kinds of sinful activities, without knowledge that such activities will keep him perpetually bound by the shackles of material bondage. Due to this polluted mentality, and due to all the sins, the aggregate combination of living entities appeared to be bluish. Such an impetus of activity for fruitive results is made possible by the dictation of the external energy of the Lord, Kala Shakti. Text 13. The subtle subject matter of creation, on which the Lord's attention was fixed, was agitated by the material motive passion, and thus the subtle form of creation pierced through his abdomen. Text 14. Piercing through the Lord's abdomen, this sum total form of the fruitive activities of the living entities took the shape of the bud of a lotus flower generated from the personality of Viṣṇu, and by his supreme will it illuminated everything like the sun and dried up the vast waters of devastation. Text 15. Into that universal lotus flower, Lord Viṣṇu personally entered as the Supersoul, and when it was thus impregnated with all the modes of material nature, the personality of Vedic wisdom, whom we call the Self-Born, was generated. Purport. This lotus flower is the universal Virat form, or the gigantic form of the Lord in the material world. It becomes amalgamated in the personality of Godhead Viṣṇu in his abdomen at the time of dissolution, and it becomes manifest at the time of creation. This is due to Garbhodakaśāyī Viṣṇu, who enters into each of the universes. In this form is the sum total of all the fruitive activities of the living entities, conditioned by material nature, and the first of them, namely Brahmā, or the controller of the universe, is generated from this lotus flower. The firstborn living being, unlike all others, has no material father, and thus he is called self-born, or Swayambhu. He goes to sleep with Narayana at the time of devastation, and when there is another creation, he is born in this way. From this description, we have the conception of three entities: the gross Virat form, the subtle Hiranyagarbha, and the material creative force, Brahmā. Text 16. Brahmā, born out of the lotus flower, could not see the world, although he was situated in the whorl. He therefore circumambulated all of space, and while moving his eyes in all directions, he achieved 4 heads in terms of the 4 directions. Text 17. Lord Brahma, situated in that lotus, could not perfectly understand the creation, the lotus, or himself. At the end of the millennium, the air of devastation began to move the water and the lotus in great circular waves. Purport. Lord Brahma was perplexed about his creation, the lotus, and the world, even though he tried to understand them for 1 millennium, which is beyond calculation in the solar years of human beings. No one, therefore, can know the mystery of the creation and cosmic manifestation simply by mental speculation. The human being is so limited in his capacity that without the help of the Supreme, he can hardly understand the mystery of the creation, continuance, and destruction of the cosmos by the will of the Lord. Text 18. Lord Brahma, in his ignorance, contemplated, "Who am I, situated on top of this lotus? What is this solitary lotus on the vast water, and wherefrom has it sprouted? There must be something downwards, and that from which this lotus has grown must be within the water." Purport. The subject matter of the speculations of Brahma in the beginning regarding the creation of the cosmic manifestation is still a subject matter for mental speculators. The most intelligent man is he who tries to find the cause of his personal existence and that of the whole cosmic creation, and thus tries to find the ultimate cause. If his attempt is properly executed with penances and perseverance, it is sure to be crowned with success. Text 19. Lord Brahma, thus contemplating, entered the water through the channel of the stem of the lotus, but in spite of entering the stem and going nearer to the navel of Viṣṇu, he could not trace out the root. Purport. By dint of one's personal endeavor, one may go nearer to the Lord, but without the Lord's mercy, one cannot reach the ultimate point. Such understanding of the Lord is possible only by devotional service, as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 18:55. Bhaktya mam abhijanati yavanyas chasmi tatpataha. Text 20. O Vidura, while searching for the cause of his existence in that way, Brahma reached his ultimate time. Time is the eternal wheel in the hand of Viṣṇu and generates the fear of death in the mind of the living entity. Text 21. Thereafter, being unable to achieve the desired destination, he retired from such searching and came back again to the top of the lotus. Thus, controlling his breathing, he concentrated his mind on the Supreme Lord. Purport. Samadhi involves concentrating the mind upon the supreme cause of all, even if one is unaware of whether his actual nature is personal, impersonal, or localized. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. To cease from personal sense endeavors and to concentrate on the Supreme on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender. And when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. I'll read that again. This is very important. Concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly a form of devotional service. To cease from personal sense endeavors and to concentrate on the Supreme Cause is a sign of self-surrender. And when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. Each and every living entity needs to engage in devotional service to the Lord if he wishes to understand the ultimate cause of his existence. Text 22. At the end of Brahma's 100 years, when his meditation was complete, he developed the required knowledge, and as a result, he could see within his heart the Supreme, whom he could not see before with the greatest endeavor. Purport. The Supreme Lord can be experienced only through the process of devotional service, and not by one's personal endeavor in mental speculation. The age of Brahmā is calculated in terms of divya years, which are distinct from the solar years of human beings. The divya years are calculated in Bhagavad Gita 8:17, Sahasra Yuga Paryantam Aharyad Brahmano Viduhu. Brahma's one day is equal to 1,000 times the aggregate of the 4 yugas, calculated to be 4,300,000 years. On that basis, Brahma meditated for 100 years before he could understand the Supreme Cause of all causes. And then he wrote the Brahma Samhita, which is approved and recognized by Lord Chaitanya, and in which he sings Govindam Adipurusham Tamaham Bhajami. One has to wait for the mercy of the Lord before one can either render service unto him or know him as he is. Text 23. Brahma could see that on the water there was a gigantic lotus-like white bedstead, the body of Sheshanaga, on which the personality of Godhead was lying alone. The whole atmosphere was illuminated by the rays of the jewels bedecking the hoods of Sheshanaga, and that illumination dissipated all the darkness of those regions. Text 24. The luster of the transcendental body of the Lord mocked the beauty of the coral mountain. The coral mountain is very beautifully dressed by the evening sky, but the yellow dress of the Lord mocked its beauty. There is gold on the summit of the mountain, but the Lord's helmet, bedecked with jewels, mocked it. The mountain's waterfalls, herbs, etc., with a panorama of flowers, seemed like garlands, but the Lord's gigantic body and his hands and legs, decorated with jewels, pearls, tulsi leaves, and flower garlands, mocked the scene on the mountain. Purport. Nature's panoramic beauty, which strikes one with wonder, may be taken as a perverted reflection of the transcendental body of the Lord. One who is therefore attracted by the beauty of the Lord is no longer attracted by the beauty of material nature, although he does not minimize its beauty. In the Bhagavad Gita 259, it is explained that one who is attracted by Param, the Supreme, is no longer attracted by anything inferior. Text 25. His transcendental body, unlimited in length and breadth, occupied the 3 planetary systems, upper, middle, and lower. His body was self-illuminated by unparalleled dress and variegatedness, and was properly ornamented. Purport. The length and breadth of the transcendental body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead could only be measured by his own measurement, because he is all-pervading throughout the complete cosmic manifestation. The beauty of material nature is due to his personal beauty, and he is always magnificently dressed and ornamented to prove his transcendental variegatedness, which is so important in the advancement of spiritual knowledge. So it's 8 o'clock, and I know that goes so quickly. It's amazing. So we'll stop here our reading, and we'll take up tomorrow. Oops. What did I do? There it is. Made it too small, sorry. Okay, we'll start tomorrow at text 26. All right, so let us hear the reflections from the devotees and perfect this process of hearing and chanting the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, the great transcendental literature. Hare Krishna.
First is from Braj-Vallabha.
Braj-Vallabha, Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
All glories to His divine grace.
In the dictionary, under regulated is just your photo. Good example for all. Thank you.
In the dictionary, under regulated is my photo. I mean, he's speaking in, poetic, words that I can't understand at all. So, anyway, I'll take your word for it. I am trying to regulate my senses. That's true. If one doesn't regulate the senses, it's very difficult to resist the beauty of the material world as it was described in these verses and purports. But it's not just from regulation, it's from using the time and the consciousness that you get from regulation to stay absorbed in hearing and remembering the glories of the Lord. I mean, Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is so perfect that if you just keep hearing it straight through, you will get everything. Hare Krishna.
And from Gopakanya Devi Dasi.
Yes, Gopakanya Devi Dasi, Hari Bol.
Jai Maharaj, Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada and cheers to all the assembled sages. Thank you.
Jai Ho,
Maharaj.
thank you very much.
And another from Braj-Vallabha.
Yes, Braj-Vallabha.
He says, concentration of the mind on the Supreme is certainly devotional service. In other words, japa, correct?
Japa, hearing Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam, remembering what you've read, repeating it to others, explaining it to others, all of these are considered equal. Hare Krishna.
And from Dayal Nitai.
Yes, Dayal Nitai, nice to talk to you in Radhanandana today.
Dear Sri the Guru Maharaj, please accept my obeisance. Thank you for tonight's reading. Hare Krishna. When I read that time is the eternal wheel in the hand of Lord Viṣṇu, do we understand that wheel to mean the Sudarshan Chakra? Thank you, your servant.
Well, I don't know exactly. I haven't heard exactly whether they're both the same. But it is a fact that when Viṣṇu carries the wheel, it's the Sudarsana chakra. But the Kala Shakti is time. So there's a connection between the Sudarsana chakra and time, and I can't honestly tell you how that works. I've never heard it. But whether it's time or whether it's the Sudarsana chakra, they're both the all-powerful weapons of the Lord which destroy everything. The Sudarsana chakra is especially meant for the demons, and the Kala chakra is meant for all the conditioned souls. That's all I can think of in terms of difference. Haribol.
This is from Celine Wetzels.
Hare Krishna, Selina?
Celine?
Celine.
Wetzels.
Oh, Celine Wetzels. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. It is wonderful to listen to your readings tonight. Thank you very much. The description of the cosmic dissolution made me wonder the following. When we go to sleep, the body shuts down. Subsequently, the activity goes to the more subtle side of our existence. The soul experiences dreams, the twirls of the mind, and so on. Also, when one ends up in a ghost-like state, it is said that the subtle body is still there, causing the soul to have an experience. Connecting to this, I was wondering if the soul also experiences something when we retract to our subtle bodies during the time of dissolution. As we keep our subtle bodies, is there still some action present or caused by it, or is there truly a complete inert state in which the soul does not know it exists? Can the soul ever be completely stopped in its activities? If yes, it seems that the soul loses that which it distinguishes and defines itself. Kindly help us understand.
The soul, when the soul is wound back up into the body of Viṣṇu during the partial dissolution, it goes into deep sleep. It's in deep sleep. But even though it's in deep sleep, it still exists. It's still conscious. Jiva Goswami uses the example that when a person goes into deep sleep, even though he loses consciousness of being, he still is conscious in a very subtle state. And therefore, when he comes out of a deep sleep, he thinks, oh, I slept so nicely. So how can he say, I slept so nicely, unless he was there? So, it's hard to interpret that to mean subtle activity, but it does mean that the subtle body contains the resultant, the subtle reactions, the resultant, how do I say this? The subtle unfulfilled, this is right. The subtle unfulfilled desires of the soul are still active. But he's not doing anything about it because he's in deep sleep. But those subtle unfulfilled desires agitates the Lord from within. And then the Lord, by His sweet will, in fulfillment of those desires, recreates the universe again. So in a sense, the unfulfilled desires of the conditioned souls are what directly stimulates the Lord to create the universe. But it's the Lord who's actually creating the universe. Hare Krishna.
Dayalu Gora Das.
Yes, Dayalu Gora.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my respectful obeisances. Thank you so much for tonight's reading. In Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam 3.18.8 purport, Srila Prabhupada explains, "The most intelligent man is he who tries to find the cause of his personal existence and that of the whole cosmic creation, and thus tries to find the ultimate cause. If his attempt is properly executed with penances and perseverance, it is sure to be crowned with success." Question: is this similar to Bhagavad Gita 7.18? All these devotees are undoubtedly magnanimous souls, but he who is situated in knowledge of me I consider to be just like my own self. Being engaged in my transcendental service, he is sure to attain me, the highest and most perfect goal.
Well, they're similar. Read the first one again, the first quote. There were two quotes.
The most intelligent man is he who tries to find the cause of his personal existence and that of the whole cosmic creation, and thus tries to find the ultimate cause.
Yes, that's right. So that is analogous or the same as that verse, 7:19 or 7. What verse was it?
7:19.
7:19. Yes. So in that verse is connected to another verse, which describes who approaches the Lord. Those who are in distress, they're in need of money or wealth, they're inquisitive, and they're in search of the truth. So then there's the verse, Udarak sarva evaite, Gyani twat maivamematam astita sahiyuktatma mamevanutamam gatim. All of those souls are considered by Krishna to be magnanimous souls. You know, it's not that one is good and one is bad. They're all magnanimous because they're approaching Krishna. But of those four, the last one, who's actually in search of the truth, is considered by the Lord to be very dear to him, especially dear to him, like his own self, because he's doing it more or less from the beginning, knowing what he's doing. It's a higher motivation, and it gives him a more intimate connection with Krishna from the beginning. Hare Krishna.
This is still more from him.
Yes.
I also really liked this. This is the best thing I've ever heard. To cease from personal sense endeavors and to concentrate on the supreme cause is a sign of self-surrender. And when self-surrender is present, that is a sure sign of devotional service. Srila Prabhupada's books really give shelter and direction in spiritual life, without which I would certainly be in darkness. Hearing from you in the daily readings, stating that this statement by Srila Prabhupada is very important, gives us education and help, like a teacher before a student. Thank you for this.
Hare Krishna. Well, thank you very much for the encouragement. I am sincerely trying to repeat what I hear from Srila Prabhupada. And the best way, of course, to do that is to recite the Bhagavatam. So I'm feeling very fortunate. Honestly, to all of you I say, I'm feeling very, very fortunate that somehow or other Krishna has inspired me from within to take up this service of reading the Bhagavatam and the other major works of Srila Prabhupada again and again, to be archived for humanity as a resource, a spiritual resource. I just feel very, very fortunate because I'm personally experiencing that whatever is going on during the day, and believe me, no matter who you are in this world today, you're going to meet all kinds of problematic thoughts, problematic persons, problematic events, problematic things. But when we read the Bhagavatam like this, especially day after day, it becomes so relishable and so much relief. We hear, we associate with the absolute truth and get relieved from all of the anxieties that we normally suffer in the material world. Hare Krishna. And anyone, therefore, what was it that when we read the verse, the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam Mahima Stotram, this Bhagavatam can be heard by everyone. It's meant for everyone. It is the way to full self-realization that can be actually performed by anyone. Hare Krishna.
From Subarao Rajagopal.
Yes, Subarao Rajagopal.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances and all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you for reading the glorious Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam.
Haribo.
In the purport of 387, Prabhupada says, quote, in devotional service, therefore, 2 items out of the 9, namely hearing and chanting, are most important. Without hearing nicely, one cannot preach the message of Vedic knowledge. Unquote. Jai ho to your Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, which enables us to listen in. Thank you.
Hare Krishna, thank you very much for that wonderful reflection. Haribo.
And this is from Maheshwar Subedi.
Maheshwar Subedi. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
And from Gauranga Gopal.
Yes, Gauranga Gopal.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, please accept my humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada. I appreciated how in text 9 the power of the Brahmanas is being described. We hear about the Brahminical power of forgiveness of Parashara Muni, who forgave the demons on the request of the great Vaṣiṣṭha Muni. I am very impressed that one Brahmana can be that powerful that he can destroy all demons at once by performing a sacrifice. If the power of a Brahmana's anger can do that, it takes at least an equal power of forgiveness to cancel such anger.
Exactly. That was a very nice reflection. Thank you very much. And that power of forgiveness is considered to be the topmost power. It is Brahminical power. It has more power than the other kinds of power. Why? Because it can melt the heart of the Lord and cause the Lord to pay attention, remember us. It gets the attention of the Lord, in other words.
And from Anandamurti.
Yes, Anandamurti, Hare Krishna.
Dear Guru Maharaj and all assembled devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Thank you so much for today's reading of Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam. Today I heard how the Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam is all transcendental and beyond time. I am feeling so fortunate to sit here in front of the computer and trying to hear this transcendental knowledge from my spiritual master. Thank you so much, and thanks to Srila Prabhupada. If you were not here, I couldn't engage myself in hearing these authorized scriptures through disciplic succession.
Hare Krishna, who was that from again? Anandamurti, thank you very much. That was a very deep and thoughtful and affectionate reflection. Thank you so much. It made me so happy to hear. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
And from Bhakta Oliver.
Yes, Bhakta Oliver.
Hare Krishna Maharaj, thank you for reading tonight. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Jai Prabhupada.
I was wondering what role Lord Shiva plays in the manifestation of the living entities, as I have heard that he facilitates the impregnation of the living entities with the material energy. Thank you.
This is described in the Brahma Samhita, not in the Govinda verses, but before. when Lord Mahavishnu glances, the glance carries the living entities all at once. And when that glance, which is non-different from Viṣṇu, it's Sada Shiva, Viṣṇu, it's an aspect of Viṣṇu. And when that glance, Sada Shiva, touches the material energy, then the souls are injected into the womb of material nature, and that Sadashiva transforms into Shambhu, or Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva has his eternal form, but this is how he participates and becomes the father of living entities. Actually, Mahavishnu is the father of living entities, but because Mahavishnu doesn't touch the material energy in that way, it is his aspect of Sadashiva who touches it and is transformed into Shambhu and becomes Lord Shiva in the material world. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much, everyone, for your lovely reflections and discussions as usual. And we will bear the separation. I wish I could do this 24/7. I don't have the qualification yet, but I'm hankering to be able to do that. And I thank you for that. And there's one more reflection.
From Gopakanya.
Yes, Gopakanya.
Thank you, dear Maharaj, for making us, the hearers, so fortunate, being with us available freely and matchlessly every day. Glories like you, Bhagavats, are profusely in Bhagavatam itself by all these pure, ever-liberated Mahabhagavats.
Hare Krishna. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Brinda ki jai. Oh, we have one more, sorry.
From Gauranga Gopal.
Jai Gauranga Gopal, Haribol. You got in under the wire.
One thing I wanted to ask you as well. We heard this morning of the incredible achievement of Mahotsaha Prabhu from Atlanta, distributing 2,003 books in one day, including 28 Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam sets.
Oh.
All that on the street, giving books hand to hand. Certainly, impossible only he quotes this, impossible only exists in a fool's dictionary.
Yes.
I just wondered if you could comment on this.
That requires full, pure enthusiasm, without any hesitation caused by doubt. If one is completely free from doubt and desires strongly enough, then the Lord will empower the devotee to do marvelous things. Hare Krishna. That is the mercy of Lord Nityananda, which has no limit. But it's very inspiring for the rest of the devotees to hear about these results. 23 sets of Bhagavatams on the street in one day. That is, only an empowered soul can do that. Hare Krishna. But if you see him in his, I've watched him a few times, he isn't what you would call a sophisticated, Brahminical, intellectual kind of person. He's just full-on surrendered. And therefore it was described in part of these readings tonight that if the service is done with sincere austerity and surrender, then the Lord will empower the devotee. So this person has no doubts, and therefore he can get the full empowerment. Hare Krishna. Śrīmad-Bhāgavatam ki jai. Samaveda Bhakta Vrinda ki jai. Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Bol. See you tomorrow night, same time, same place, same topic, as Maitreya continues to answer the questions of Vidura. And now we're hearing about the creation of the universe. Hare Krishna, from Sankarsana to Sanat Kumar. And this is the Parampara system. It's a whole system of questions and answers. See you tomorrow. Haribol.